Kakadosh, Boker Or, Shavua Tov. Daf Yomi Masechet Horayot, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph 13a1 says the Gemara. We are on the first line, the first words, Par Kohen Mashiach, right? Mashiach Upara Edah. So the Para Mashiach is before Para Edah in all of his actions. Says the Gemara, Menan Emile, how do we know these words? So he says, right, the Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita, you're going to come and you're going to burn, right? The Para Mashiach is going to be burning the Sarafoto just like the first Para, okay? Which means, how do we know that the Para Kohen Mashiach comes before Para Min Davar Shel Tzibur? So he says, Sarafoto Kasher Para Rishon, Matamul comes to teach you, Harishon, Shier Rishon Kodem Para Kol Edavu. So the Para Kohen Mashiach is Rishon, is first, even before Para Edah Bechol Maasav. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Par Kohen Mashiach Upara Edah Omnim. Right? If you have the Par Kohen Mashiach and Para Edah right there, Par Kohen Mashiach, Kodenu Para Edah Bechol Maasav. Hoilu Mashiach Mechaper, Ve'edah Mitkaperet. Right? He says, 1 second. But they're both Mechaper. Also the one of the Mashiach, and also the Par Ha'edah. So Dinu Shiachtim al Mechaper la Korban. So I would have thought to say that Korban Kohen Mashiach is going to be before the Par Helem Davar Shel Tzibur. I'm going to ask you a question. You do kaparot. Who do you do kaparot first to? Yourself, or let's say your wife? Yourself or your children? Who do you do it first? Yourself first. Why? Right? I always say lavdila lefavdolo, the same thing that they say on the plane. Why? What do they always say on the plane? You first put on your own mask, and then you put on the mask of the children. Why? Because you have to be pure. You have to be 100% clean. Once you're clean, now you can be mechaper on other people as well. In a sense, so first comes you and everybody else. Okay, capish? Next. Par helem davar shel tzibur. Kodem the par shel avodat kochavim. The par helem davar shel tzibur is going to be before the par of avodat kochavim. My time, what's reasoning? Hay chatat, v'hayola. He says the par helem davar shel tzibur, shel averot, is going to be a chatat. The par of the avodat kochavim is an olah. And therefore the chatat is always before an olah. The Tanya was we learned in the Braita, Vikrivet Asher Lachatat Rishona. What is it coming to Lachatat Rishona? In Lemeshete Chatat Rishona Kavanema Vetashni Yaaseh Ola Kamishpat. Ela ze banaav shiye kol chataot kodmot leolot habayim amen. Whenever you have a chatat and an olah, chatat is a sin offering, an olah is a burnt offering. Whenever you have a chatat and an olah, which happens many times, so you always bring the chatat before the olah. This is a binyan av. This is where we're learning it from. You always bring the korban chatat, and then you bring the korban olah. V'kai melanu we paskin, ta'afilu chatat ha'of kodem le'olat. Even chatat ha'of comes before an olat bema. So for example, a zav. What does a zav bring? You know what a zav is? A man that has a seminal discharge. When his male organ is dead meaning it's not aroused, right? And he still has a discharge coming out of semen. Right? So what happens in such a case? He has to bring, he's a zav. So just like a zava is a woman that she has just blood as a jishran. So a zav has to bring an olat ha'of and a chatat ha'of. So which one comes first? The olah or chatat? Chatat. That's what we just learned now. Whenever you have two korbanot, an olah and a chatat, the chatat is always la première. Et le deuxième is the olah. Capish? Next. Par avodat kochavim kodem seir avodat kochavim. The par of the avodat kochavim comes before the seir of the kochavim. Says the Gemara, my why? Hay chatav hay olah. Right? Very simple. We already said chatat and olah. Okay, very good. Next. Amri memar lava. We said in Eretz Yisrael. Mishmed Rabbi Bar Mari in the name of Rabbi Mari. Chatat avodat kochavim chasida aleph. The chatat of the avodat kochavim in the Torah is missing an aleph. Because it says, the chatat usually is spelled chet, tet, aleph, tav. Here, it doesn't have the aleph. So it's ktiv right without it. So therefore, the fact that it's missing an aleph is coming to teach you that it's chaser from the malat of the other chataot, and therefore it's not going to be before the paraola. Meaning there's a special deen, the paraola over here is going to be first. That's an exception to the rule. So one more time. Binyan av is that when you have a chatat and olah, what is always first? The chatat. An exception to the rule is what? is the Par Avodat Kochavim before the Said. Yeah? Which means the Said is the Chatat and the Par is the Olah. And here it's an exception to the rule. You're going to bring the Olah first. Rava comes and he says, Kamishpat Ktiv Beh. When it says Kamishpat, what is it coming to teach you? So he comes and he says, Kamishpat is mashma that the Seder Avodat Korbanot is Kamishpat Seder Ktivatam B'Pasuk, which is basically going to be Usiri Zimechal Chatat. So Para Olah, and then afterwards, meaning, right, that basically we're going like the order of the Pasuk. Usually you're right, the Chatat is always before Nolah, but here, since in the Pasuk it tells you first the Olah and then the Chatat, so here that's what you have to do it, like the Pasuk. Now says the Gemara, Seir Avodat Kochavim is before the Seir of the Chatat of the Nasi. My Tama. That means even though here they're both Chataot, right? One's a Tzibur and one's a Yachid. Right? So therefore, the one of the Tzibur is more Chashuv than the one of the Yachid. Another din. Yeah, everyone understood. So one more time, here there are two Chataot. So if the two Chataot, but you have a Tzibur. So the Tzibur comes first. Next, Seir Nasi Kodem Seirat Yachid. My Tama, Haymelech Vahediot. One is the king. So for the one of the king always comes before the one of regular person. Another one, right? Because the Melech comes Rishon. The Melech always comes first. Seirat Yachid kodemet lekivsat Yachid. The Seirat Yachid comes before the Kivsat Yachid. The Hatanya Kivsat Yachid kodemet Seirat Yachid. I thought it was opposite. Samar Rabbi comes and he says Tanai hits Machlok Tanaim. More savar the Seirat difa sheken nitrabta etzel avodat kovim biyachid. Right? The more savar and the other one holds Kivsat difa. Why sheken nitrabta be'aliyah? So says the Gemara, okay, fine. Korban HaOmer is before the keves, which comes with the Korban HaOmer. Shtei Alechem is going to be before the kevasim, which comes with it. Zeh HaKelal, this is a general rule. Davar haba begin layom. Anything comes because of the day, comes before the davar haba begin lechem. Comes before the thing which comes with the Korban, which means the Minchat HaOmer and Shtei Alechem is because of the day. Right? You bring it because of the day, whether it's going to be the second day of Pesach or it's going to be Shavuot. So that's going to come before the kivasim, which comes with the korbanot, because that's coming because of the mincha of the day. So therefore, that's why the lechem, right, is going to be before, right, the kevis. Okay? Until here we're clear? So again, here we were just bringing down different, like, seder difiyot, just priorities, like which comes first. Okay? So you have it, by the way, in the bottom there. You have an entire chart. Capish? Okay. Next, Mishnah. Ha'ish kodem liisha le'achayot. When you have a man and a woman in front of you. Okay? Now remember that a man is chayav in all the mitzvot. A woman is not. And therefore, right, to do with le'achayot, right, and hashavat aveda, the man comes first. So that means if you have an obligation and you can only save one, the man or the woman, who do you save? The man. What happens if you have to do hashavat aveda? Who do you do first? The man. Haisha kodem liish leksut. Right? The woman comes first to go out for clothing. Ulotzim bet hashevi. And to take out of captivity. By the way, now you think that it's only just common rules. Right? What did they do with Hamas? The first thing that they commanded was what? They have to take out the women and children. Because the women come before the men. But what happens if they're going to come and they're going to violate both the men and the women? Meaning that was only because they're going to come, they're going to violate women. What happens if they're also going to violate the men? Right? Like Mishkav Zachor. So Aish Kodem Leisha. So then the men are before the women. Okay? Everyone with me? Yeah? Very good. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned the Raita. Hayahu ve'aviv ve'robo b'shevi. What happens if his father, right, and his rabbi are in captivity? Who Kodem le'rabo? He comes before his rabbi. Ve'rabo Kodem le'aviv. And his rabbi comes before his father. Right? Now he says, "V'imo kodem le'ukuma." But if it's his mother was there, she comes before everybody. But she's a woman. Chacham comes before a melech Yisrael. You hear that? A chacham comes before a melech. He says, "Chacham shemet en lanu kayotze bo." Yeah, he says because a chacham that dies, that's it. He says, "Melech Yisrael shemet." Kol Yisrael, everyone could become a king. Melech kodem lekohen gadol. So look what's going on over here. You've got chacham. Melech, Kohen Gadol. That's the order. Chacham is on the top. Then a Melech. And then a Kohen Gadol. So he says, Shneimar vayomer melech lahem kechu imachem, right? Avdei adonechem. Let's bring a pasuk. Kohen Gadol comes before a Navi. Shneimar umashach oto sham tzadok HaKohen v'natan Navi. So first it gave Tzadok HaKohen, and then it gave Natan Navi. So for a Kohen Gadol comes before a Navi. So you've got Haham, Melech, Kohen Gadol, Navi. Okay? ואומר, there's another pasuk also. שמע יהושע כהן גדול, אתה ורעך. יכול להיות ידידות היו ואתה ידידות. אתה מונמן, כי אנשי מופת הם, היו נביאים. ואין מופת אלא נביא, שנאמר ונתן לך אות ומופת. Okay? Fine. משוח בשמן המשחה קוראים מרובה בגדים. Remember, a Kohen Gadol that was anointed always comes before a Kohen Gadol which was only מרובה בגדים. That means he just has more clothing. He was never actually anointed. And מרובה בגדים is before a Mashiach שעבר מלחמה כל יום. Kohen Mashiach that was taken away because of his keri. The Mashiach שעבר מלחמה כל יום is before עבר מלחמת mumo. Somebody that goes out just because of his mum. Because obviously he's a higher level. Because the one that went out of the mum is much more powerful than just the keri. Keri goes to the mikveh and that's it. Here it's a mum. Avar milchama mumo is better than a Mashiach milchama. That means Mashiach milchama was that he went out to war. So he was like the Kohen that used to go out to war. Mashiach milchama comes before the Sgan. This is the deputy Kohen Gadol. Right? The Sgan Kohen Gadol. The Sgan kodem Amarkal. The Sgan is going to go, why Amarkal? What's an Amarkal? Amar Chassa Amarkula. He says it's a memune on all the Kohanim, right? And they don't ask on his questions right, when he says something. Meaning the Markal is, I don't know how you would say it in English, but basically he's like the general or whatever it is. Meaning that you had the Kohen Gadol, the deputy Kohen Gadol, and then you had the Kohen Gadol that used to go out to war, right? And then you have it's like a Ramatkal. It's like a general. He was in charge of all the Kohanim. He says something, nobody asks. You're not allowed to ask. He says it, Gamarnu, Sof Pasuk. Amarkal comes before the Gizbar. The Gizbar was the treasurer in the Bet HaMikdash. Gizbar comes before the Rosh HaMishmar. Remember, every single Kohanim, they had the Rosh HaMishmarot. So the Gizbar comes before the Rosh, right? The Rosh Mishmar comes before the Rosh Betav. The Rosh Betav is within the Mishmarot. You have the heads of the families. The Rosh Betav comes before the Kohen Ediot. So so now they're going to ask the question, Linyan Tumah, to become Tamemet, right, for a mitzvah, Tameh mitzvah, Zgan Moshiach Milchama, which one is supposed to do it? Which one should become Tameh? The Zgan Kohen Gadol or the Moshiach Milchama? Samar Mazut, Rabbi Nachman, Tashema, תתן לי סגן ומשוח מלחמה שמלוכה בית פגע במצווה, מותר שיתאמר משוח מלחמה ויתאמר סגן. שמלבוא פסול בכהן גדול נכנס לסגן משמש תחתיו. Because basically, the sgan is always he's always like the second in line. So if the Kohen Gadol becomes pasul for it, he has to go in. So if he's going to become now tameh, it's a problem. So it's better that the Kohen Mashuach Milchama should become tameh and not the sgan. So I asked him, what are you talking about? Tanya Mashuach Milchama comes before the sgan. So Mavina Kitanya hi lachayoto, no, to let him live. Meaning that you're supposed to come and you're supposed to let the Mashuach Milchama before the sgan Kohen Gadol, but not to do it tumah. To do it tumah, right? The sgan has to be more fitting, so that way, just in case the psul comes to the Kohen Gadol, he's going to do it. Yeah. Next. Kohen kodem lelewi. Mishnah on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, right towards the bottom. The Kohen comes before the Levi, right? The Levi before Yisrael before the Mamzer before the Natin before the Ger before the Eved Meshuchrar. Okay, so basically this is the order. You got Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, Mamzer, Natin, Ger, Eved Meshuchrar. Okay. Natin is Netanites. They were people that converted, but it wasn't a good, it wasn't the best conversions. Okay? They came from the Givonim that they converted during the time of Yoshua, right? So they used to be, wood choppers and bring the water. So there's a whole question, what happened exactly? Was it a good conversion? Not a good, they were called Netinim. Okay? Ematai, when do we go like these things? Bizman shekulam shavim, if they're all equal. Aval im haya mamzer talmid chacham. Imagine you have a mamzer Tamid Chacham. And you have a Kohen Gadol Ma'aretz, the Tamid Chacham comes before the Kohen Gadol Ma'aretz. Because the Kohen Gadol, remember, Keter Torah ole al gabehen. The Keter Torah is always the highest one. So it doesn't matter whether the guy's a mamzer. Doesn't matter. He's a Tamid Chacham. The Tamid Chacham comes before the Kohen Gadol. Okay? Gemara. Kohen Kodem LeLevi. Shneimar. How do we know the Kohen comes before the... Because it says, Bnei Amram Aaron Moshe. V'yibadel Aaron l'kdisho kodesh kadashim. Levi comes before Yisrael. How do we know? Yisrael comes before the Mamzer. Mamzer comes before the Natin. Remember that the Mamzer, he still comes from a kosher. His father is a Jew. I just said it was the primitive relations, right? But this one is Netanim, comes from the Givonim. Natin comes before a Ger. Ze gadal imanu b'kedusha, because he grew up in kedusha, and this one he just converted afterwards. The ger comes before an eved because the eved is arur, and the ger is not arur. Capish? It's very simple Gemara now. Yeah. Says the Gemara, Ematai, when do we say these words? If they're all equal, how do we know these words? Amar Rabbi Acha Rabbi Chanina Damakad says a pasuk. Yekarahi mi perinim mi kohen gadol shenichlas lefaninim. It says that the Torah is yekarahi mi perinim. What does that mean? He's even more yakar than a kohen gadol. Shesh kohen gadol nichnas lifnai lifnim. And therefore, you see from here that to do with the kiuna gdola, Tamid Chacham comes before. Tanya, we learned in a right. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, "Bedin hu shiakdim even shechal gerer." Really, be'emet and even shechal should even before be the ger. Shezeh gadal imen b'kedusha, because he grew up Jewish, right? He grew up in a Jewish home. Zeh lo gadal imen b'kedusha. Ela shezeh yarur v'zeh lo yabichal arur. But one was cursed and one was not. The Eved was cursed, and that's why, right? Shalut tamidav Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok b'nema kol ratzin lisa gioret. So he says, so why is it that everyone's running to get married to a gioret and not to get married to a meshuchreret? Here it says that maybe one of the reasons is because if you get a gioret, she's going to be very humble. Because it says nasiv itada, right? Nachi garda nasiv itada, which means, put your head down and go get married. So therefore, she'll never mistalbet alecha. She's never going to put herself above you, because she's a gioret, so she's always very humble. If she's going to come from a very hashuv family, so then she's on top of you. So that's why he says everyone's running after a gioret and not a shifcha meshuchreret. Samalehem zu hayta bichlal arur, zu lo hayta bichlal arur. Right? Davar acher, another explanation. Zu hayta becheskat shimur. Right? The gioret watched herself from pritzut. The shifcha was never. Why? Because usually a shifcha is mufkeret. She's a very everything is promiscuous. So shalu tamidav et Rabbi Elazar, minema kelev makir et kono. Why is it that the dog, he knows his master? V'chatul eno makir et kono, but the cat does not. So Amalem, he says, uma haochel mima she'achbar ochel. It's a kal v'chomer. Just like the one that eats from that which the achbar eats is mishakeach, haochel achbar atzmo, right? Alacha kama v'chama, which means like this. If you eat something after an achbar, it's kasher l'shicha, you forget. So imagine an achbar comes and it eats a little piece of cheese, and then you come and you take the leftovers and you eat it. You forget your learning. So he says, the cat, what does the cat eat? The achbar. So if the cat eats the mice, right? Yeah, le chat, manger, le souris, right? La chat. Yeah? Le chat. Le chat. Right? Manger, le souris. La souris. Yeah? So he comes and he says the what? So he says in such a concept, what happens? Yeah, he says in such a concept, he says for sure it's kasher l'shicha, so he forgets his master. Yeah, he forgets his master. So he says uma ochel mima she'achbar ochel meshkiach, ochel achbar atzmo achar kama v'chama. Shalu tamidav Rabbi Elazar, minema akol moshlim b'achbarim. He says, why is people always running after the achbar? What are they always miskenim the mice? Why are they always running after them? So he says neshe suran rav, because yetzel libam is rab yoter. It's very, very bad. That's why they're always running after them. The Yetzirah. Maihi, what does that mean? Because they come and they even eat clothing, right? Even though they don't have a benefit from it. Meaning they have such a bad Yetzirah, they suddenly start eating your clothing. They're not benefit. At least food, okay, they're hungry. Fine, let them eat. Clothing, what are they doing? They have such a bad Yetzirah, everyone runs after them. You'd give them ubet, 13b. Rav Papa says, Afilu shifta mara gaitze. Says even a yated, right, which is made out of wood and it doesn't have any taste, they're going to start chomping upon it. Tanur Rabbanan, we learned to the right. By the way, this is a very famous Gemara. There's 5 things that make a person forget their learning. If you're going to eat that which is left over from an achbar or a chatul, right? From la souris le sha. Yeah? If you're going to eat the heart of an animal. But agil bezetim, if you eat olives too much, you're agil bezetim. Right? So he says, if you're going to drink water, that's which is left over of washings. Right? If you're going to wash your feet, one on top of another, you're even going to put your kalim underneath your head. Right? But there are 5 things that you do, and it's going to bring back the learning. So by the way, all these things, okay, the majority of people, that's why, by the way, they don't sell hearts. You could find hearts in certain kosher stores, But technically speaking, it's mishakach et alimut. It makes you forget your learning. So there's a whole question: are women obligated or not? That's why they sell it. Women, do women have an isur? Yes, exactly. So that's why hearts make. So here it says al lev shel behema. It says behema, but here it says, for example, a para or tina. But some people say that it's also huadin levov. Some people say it's the same halacha. Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, 100%. No, so again, it's kosher, but it's just it makes you forget your learning. So that's the whole question. Are you supposed to sell it or not? Haragil bezetim. If you're gonna, because the question is 1 second. If you also eat too much olives, it's also masheh. So what? Why are you allowed to sell olives and not animal hearts, chicken hearts? So they sell it because it's kosher. Be'emet it's kosher. Well, the question is mishakach lamudo. It makes you forget your learning. So the question is but did you realize here it just says you eat it by zetim? It says haragil. You're accustomed to it. There's a whole question. What does it mean when you're accustomed? What does that mean? There are 5 things that bring back your learning. Pat pechamim, right? What does that mean? Pat, bread, which was baked on coals. All of a sudden the coals itself. If you're going to eat a beitza, right? Like a roasted egg without the salt. But if you eat shemen zait, olive oil. With wine and besamim. If you're going to drink the water from the leftover of the kneading. Even if you're going to dip your finger in the salt and you eat it. This is a pretty big deal, by the way. That he brings down that, after the motzi, whatever it is, you dip your finger in the salt and you eat it, and it helps you remember your learning. Says the Gemara, that's why, by the way, there's a Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky that says that you should always add olive oil to the olives. This is why, because that way it's going to bring back the learning instead of getting you forgetting. That means even though the olives make you forget, the shemen zayit is opposite effect. So it's like two double negatives. It makes a person pikach. With 1 finger. So he says, what does that mean? This is just the way how to remember it. I have to check it up. Remind me though, but I remember. I think it's one of the fingers. I don't remember which one. That you dip 1 finger in salt and then you eat it, and that's tovelet ba'om melach. But okay, fine. We're gonna have to remind me, and I'll try to look it up. No, אבל זה בגלל זוגות. זה משהו אחר. So to minute, there's a concept that a person should not eat zugot, zug. So to minute, we shouldn't eat 2, 4, 6, 8, או 1, 3, 5, 7, דברים כאלה. זה הכוונה. אי-זוגי אתה יכול לאכול. Yeah, but that's because of zugot. Zugot is another concept, right? Which one? Yeah, that's what you always do. You see, הוא תמיד מכין לי את הכל 3, 3, 3. Fine. 10 דברים קשים ללימוד. There are 10 things which are not good for limud. That means he's not going to understand his learning. One of them is texting during the what's it called, the shiur. That's for sure. But number 1, hover tachat afsar gamal v'chol tachat gamal. If you go under the afsar gamal or kol actual gamal, meaning you're going to go underneath like the, how do you call the saddle of the gamal where he sits. Number 2, if you're going to go in between 2 gimalim, if you go between 2 women, if a woman goes in between 2 men. Yeah, also. He says, don't go underneath a reach of a nevela, of a carcass. Don't go underneath a bridge that there's no water under it for 40 days. If you eat bread which was not 100% cooked, baked. If you're going to come, you're going to eat from a kaf, which is right from a spoon, from a ladle, right, that's taking out the zuama. If you're going to drink from a water source that goes through a cemetery. And number 10, if you're going to look at the face of a dead person. Even if you're going to read the ktav on top of the kever. We learned in the Braita. When the nasi goes into the bet midrash or anywhere, everybody has to come. Look in the bottom here. Wow. Look how many other things is dvarim kashim l'shikha, gava, kas, all the, and then dvarim tovim lezikaron. He brings a whole list I have a whole bunch of things here. You guys looking? Right afterwards, look it up. Beautiful things. Things which make you forget things and things which make you remember you're learning. So there's a whole thing here, right? Look it up afterwards, okay? Because it's beautiful stuff, right? It's somebody that doesn't do chazara, yeah? Kinyam Masechta, right? Gava, Kas, Aleph, 26. He says, Da'agat Parnasa, right? Machnisu lo l'rosho dvarim batelim. Mi she'eno omed bifnei rabo. He doesn't stand up in front of his rabbi. Mi she'eno nizar litol yadayim b'dvarim etzrichim netila. All these, there's a whole thing here. Here it's 24 things. These are all things which make him kasher l'shicha. But then there are things which make him actually help learning. Fine. So one more time. The Nasi comes in. What happens? There's the Nasi Sanhedrin. When he comes in, everybody has to stand up. They're not allowed to sit down until he says Shevu. When the Avbeti nichnas, they make like two rows. That way he goes through them. Until he goes through them. One of them stands, right? And one of them, right? They sit, meaning the one that he already passed by. They're allowed to go on top of the people's heads. And they pass by. Yeah, so he says, Yatsa, if he went out for tzorech, he comes back in and he goes in his place. So basically the children of the Talmidei Chachamim, right, that they are the ones, the Talmidei Chachamim are the ones in charge of the tzibur. So therefore, when they have dat, they come inside and they actually face their father and they give their backs to everybody else. But if they can't, then they look at everyone else. They make them also snifim because of the kavod of their father. That means there's a special kavod that you have to give to a ben Tamil Chacham. Okay? Amar Mor says, Yatza letzorech. Right? If right now the Talmid, right, or the, when letzorech, nechas yoshev b'mkomo. Amar Rav Papa lo amru ela lektanim. That's only going to be ktanim. Gdolim lo. So he should have checked at the beginning. A person should always get up early and late, right, in order that he shouldn't distance himself, right, throughout the entire day, meaning that's because it's sniut. Ha'inna de chalsha alma, and now that the people are very chalashim, so afilu ligdolim, even for gdolim, right? Gdolim is number 1 and number 2, obviously. During the lifetime of their father, in front of their fathers. Right? That means it's only when the father is alive and in front of them. If the father already passed away, so then you don't give them kavod because the kavod was only because of their father. Right? So bar minan, right? Somebody's an orphan, right? But he's a son of a rabbi, but the father's not alive anymore, so they don't give him the kavod because it's only because of the kavod of the father. So it has to be that the father's alive and in front of the father. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, during the time of Rashbag, it was taught. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Nasi, Rabbi Meir, he was the chacham. Rabbi Natan, he was Av Bedin. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Hatam, when Shimon Gamliel was there, everyone would stand up for him. Rabbi Natan, when Rabbi Natan would come in, everyone would get up for them. Amar Rashbag, oh, you have to make a differentiation between them and me. So Takin HaMatnita, so then they went and they made this Mishnah. Hahu Yoma lo avu Rabbi Meir Rabbi Natanatam, so they weren't there. Everyone saw that they didn't get up. So they said, my high, what's going on? Amru luhu, they went and they said, this is what Rashbag did. Amar Rabbi Meir Rabbi Natan, Ana Chacham v'atav betin, it come into Kiledidan. He says, well, we're also going to do it. What are we going to do? Namely, if we're going to come and say Gale Uktzim, right? We're going to learn Uktzim, the Lele. He didn't learn it. We're going to say Mimale Gvurot Hashem. So Na'abre, then you're going to become the Nasi. Which means basically the Bemir came and they went and they made a trampa. They were going to come and take off from Gamliel. The Rashbag, sorry. Why? Because they were a greater. So Shaminu Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi, Amar, he's going to be embarrassed. He kept on learning the entire Masechet again and again. Amar, he comes and he says, what's going on? So he comes and he says, maybe there's something that there's something against me. I have to know. Like, why does he keep on doing this in front of me? So Yav Data, he started paying attention, and he learned it. Lemachar, right? Lemachar, Amru, they said, Patach Amar, Batar Deukim, and after he finished, Amalu, Ilo Gamina, you would have embarrassed me. Pakid, they threw them out of the Bet of Midrash. They threw them out of the Bet of Midrash. So Havu Katvu, Kushiata Bibit Kaushad, so they were writing things down and they were throwing it in the Bet of Midrash. Tava Mifrik, right? Whatever was answered was answered. Whatever was not, they went and they brought it back to them. He says, what? The entire Torah is on the outside and we're on the inside. What's going on? So he says, let's bring them in. But we're going to give them a knas. That we're not going to say a halacha in their names. And therefore, from then on, asikul Rabbi Meir acherim. That's why they called the Rabbi Meir acherim. And Rabbi Natan, they always brought him down as yesh omrim. Meaning they gave him a knas that because kilu of what they did, we have to bring them in. They were smarter than we are. But from now on, Rabbi Meir is acherim. And Rabbi Natan is going to be yesh omrim. So they went and they showed them in a dream. Zilu paisel b'shbag. So they went, right, and they appeased Rashbag. Rabbi Natan azal, Rabbi Meir lo azal. So Rabbi Natan, he went and he did it. Rabbi Meir didn't. So he says, why? Because Rabbi Meir said, Divrei chalamol lo man min moledin. Ki az Rabbi Natan, when Rabbi Natan went, Amaleh Rashbag, nehida ani lach kamra davuch. He says it should help the avnet chashuv of your father, right? Which means that, the position that he was Rosh HaGolav, right? And therefore he's the meve av beddin, to become the av beddin. Shavir nami nasi. Right? You want a nasi? Or is it already enough to be the av beddin? What? So he's going to make it the nasi? No, he's saying that it's enough for you to become av beddin, but not nasi. Because each one had their positions. You understand? Again, there were three different positions. There was the chacham, there was the av beddin, and then there was the nasi. And each one had their own positions. So Matzli Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon Berei Acherim Omrim Ilu Haya Tmura, right? Lo Haya Karev. It wouldn't have been brought, and this is we're going to continue Bezat Hashem tomorrow.